Hello and welcome to the video tutorial for Optional Practical Training, or OPT, for F1 international students. This is an employment workshop and must be completed before moving forward with the OPT application process. Today we're going to talk about what OPT is, the proper planning for OPT, preparing for the OPT application, what to expect during the sending and processing of your OPT application, what your responsibilities are during OPT, and your options after your OPT, optional practical training, has finished. You should very well know that international students, F1 students, have limited work authorization available since your primary purpose is study. Many of you will have taken advantage of the on-campus employment authorization at CLC. You might have also taken advantage of curricular practical training, the employment that comes before the completion of your studies, during your program. But today we're going to focus on optional practical training, which is the one-year work authorization after the completion of your studies. Should you apply for CPT or OPT? Hopefully you know that you should be applying for OPT, but let's go over some basic questions. When can I use OPT? OPT is used after the completion of your studies. Do you have to have a job to apply for OPT? Unlike CPT, you do not need a job to apply for OPT. We'll talk a little bit more about unemployment periods shortly. Can I work at any kind of job? No. Just the same as CPT, it is the student's responsibility to find employment in his or her field of study. It must be directly related to your major that is listed on your I-20. Who gives the authorization for OPT? For CPT, I, Jacob, the International Student Advisor, authorizes your off-campus employment, or CPT, based on our Cooperative Education Agreement. However, the CIE, or Jacob, or your International Student Advisor, can only recommend OPT. USCIS, United States Customs and Immigration Services, gives OPT approval. Processing time can take up to 90 days and even longer. How long can I use OPT? The maximum length of OPT at the bachelor's degree level is 29 months, based on the possibility of a 17-month OPT STEM extension, science, technology, engineering, or mathematics degree. However, at the associate's level, you are only able to request 12 months of post-completion OPT, or 1 year following the completion of your studies. Let's talk a little bit about OPT so that we gain a firmer grasp of our responsibilities. OPT is off-campus employment authorization in a student's field of study after the completion of their studies. It is a benefit, not a guaranteed right of the F1 status. CLC still maintains control of your I-20 during your time on OPT, and in the eyes of immigration, you are still a student. Even though you are not enrolled in courses at the College of Lake County, you are still considered a student. I still manage your immigration record, CLC still manages your immigration record, and you're expected to report in each semester. The practical experience or employment must be in your academic field, and must directly relate to the level and major of your current degree program listed on your I-20. It can be paid or unpaid. However, I would encourage you to find those paid internship positions. And you do not need a job offer, as previously mentioned, to apply or receive the benefit. Who can apply for OPT? F1 students who have been enrolled full-time in non-ELI courses for 1 academic year, 9 months, or 2 full academic semesters prior to the authorization date are in F1 status at the time of the application and have completed their degree requirements. If you've gone through this online training, you're good to go. If you're in good academic standing and completed your degree program, you're good to go. If you've submitted your OPT paperwork to the Center for International Education, and only after you've been issued an OPT I-20. If you do that, complete the application procedure, submit it to USCIS, you should be approved and get your 12 months of off-campus employment. What employment counts as OPT? There are several different types. You can be employed by multiple businesses. You can have several short-term multiple employers. You can work for hire as a contractual relationship. There can be an employment through an agency or consulting firm. And in the very rarest of occasions, you can be a self-employed business owner. Most of our students take advantage of working for a company that is already established and is what I would highly recommend for you at the associate's level. When can I use OPT? OPT actually can be granted before the completion of your studies, but we have CPT to take advantage of that off-campus employment authorization, and it's an easier process before you graduate because the Center for International Education and your International Student Advisor grants the benefit. The post-completion, full-time after the completion of your degree requirements is the most common OPT used and what we will be recommending for you to use at the College of Lake County. Planning for OPT. Let's go over the process. Number one, you're going to verify your graduation from the College of Lake County. Before we can apply for OPT, I need to know that you are actually going to be completing your degree requirements when you say so. Once you get that graduation requirement, we're all set. You apply for OPT using the CIE verification form, which was attached to the email you received with this video. You will submit the required application to USCIS with all required documentation. You will then receive from USCIS a notice of receipt of your application with a case number. This will allow you and your International Student Advisor to constantly check for updates on your case and to ask any questions if needed. If all goes well and your application is approved, you will receive an employment authorization document, an EAD, and you might possibly be required for biometrics, fingerprints, or retina scans. And always be on the lookout for a request for evidence, or an RFE. This can happen if USCIS needs some further clarification on your documentation. If all goes well, you can begin employment and degree field within 60 days of your graduation date. You can enjoy 1 full year of OPT employment. And after you're done, you can head home and share your experience or transfer to a 4-year school to continue your education. How do I determine my completion date? Your completion date is based on the completion of your degree requirements. It is not the graduation date. Students can't delay graduation to extend program completion. What I mean by that is if you've completed all your degree requirements for May of 2016, then you are not able to just take more and more classes to extend your actual participating in a graduation ceremony to that following year. Your degree requirement completion is when you've completed all of the necessary courses and credits to get the degree. This is also not your I-20 completion date. Your I-20 completion date is an estimate that I have put of the time that you needed to complete your associate's degree. Some students will complete degree requirements well before the I-20 end date. How do you determine your OPT start date? Your OPT start date can be as early as the day after graduation or as late as 60 days after the graduation. You request your start date in the application that you submit to USCIS. Depending on when you mail your application, you might or might not receive your requested OPT start date. Here's an example of the CLC OPT timeline. Let's say that you're graduating here at this date. You have 90 days, this will typically be in the middle of February, that you can begin to apply for OPT. You must apply and submit your application between this window. The recommended time to complete is you do not wait any later than 1 month before your graduation. You select your start date between the 60 days after your graduation date. So you must choose a day to start within 60 days following graduation for your OPT start date. When you're granted OPT, you'll be given 12 months of OPT employment. Following the end of your OPT, which will be specified in your EAD card, you will have 60 days to either depart the U.S., transfer to another school, or change to another visa category. Couple important things to remember is that during that 60-day grace period, you are not able to leave and then re-enter the country. So just to recap, 90 days before graduation, the earliest date you can submit your OPT application to USCIS, because it will take about 90 days for them to process your application. Within the 60 days of after graduation, you will need to select your start time for OPT, and your 12-month OPT authorization period varies depending on the requested start date, application submission date, and the ultimate date that USCIS grants you. During the 12 months of OPT that you are authorized for, you can't have any more than 90 days combined of unemployment. How do you track this? Well, you must constantly update your international student advisor on the dates of your employment. The latest OPT can be completed is 14 months after the start date. Do I need a job right away? As I mentioned, you're allowed 90 days of unemployment. You will count only days between the dates listed on your employment authorization document. This is all days, including weekends and holidays. Count any week employed less than 20 hours, and cumulative over 12 months of OPT. You will also count days that you spend outside of the U.S. It's considered a violation of status to go over 90 days of unemployment, and if doing so, your international student advisor will be forced to terminate your student visa. Preparing your OPT application. Step 1. You're going to meet with an academic counselor or advisor to discuss your graduation requirements and to make sure that you are qualified and that you have successfully petitioned to graduate. You can complete and submit a petition for graduation form at the address listed below or through My CLC. And once you have received notice from Admissions and Records that you are ready to graduate, you are then ready to begin the application process for OPT. Step 2 is to complete the OPT request form for the Center for International Education. You'll put information such as your name, your address, your email, verifying that you've completed all requirements for your degree, the anticipated date of completion for your degree, what type of OPT you're requesting, which it will be post-completion. And then you're going to request the OPT start date and end date, of which I can help you select those dates. You will also, if known at the time of application, fill out the employer and company and contact information for the company willing to hire you. Step 3 is you're going to gather the required documents. You're going to obtain 2 passport-style photos. You can get this from Walgreens or CVS. You're going to get a copy of your updated I-20 with the DSO or your International Student Advisor's signature on page 2, and make sure that you also sign it. You'll get a copy of the most recent electronic I-94. If you have benefited from CPT or OPT in the past, a copy of any old I-20s must be included. Copies of any previous employment authorization documents, if applicable. A completed Center for International Education OPT request form. Copy of the ID pages, F1 visa, and stamps in your passport. You can choose to complete the form G1145, which provides you electronic notification of your case status, and you will need to obtain a cashier's check or money order made payable to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security for $410. Make sure to keep copies of everything before sending it in. Step 4. You're going to fill out the form I-765, the application for employment authorization. You can find that document by clicking this link in the PowerPoint. And for help filling out the form I-765, please see the information sheet on the CIE's website or the sheet that was attached to the email, and you can always come in and ask Jacob for help as well. Be sure to use blue ink and make sure that all of your signature stays between the lines. Step 5. is the G1145 form. This is for email notifications, possibly text message on the status of your application. It's optional. You do not have to complete this form. Step 6 is you will collect the updated I-20 with OPT recommendation from the Center for International Education, and a copy of this I-20 must be sent along with copies of all other I-20s to USCIS as a part of your request for employment authorization. Sending and processing the application for OPT. How should I mail the final application if I choose to mail it myself? The address below is only for applications sent through services provided by the U.S. Postal Service. Keeping track of your application status. After you submit your OPT application material, you will receive an email notification or a written notification from USCIS in 2 to 3 weeks. You can check the status of your case information in the email. A sample email is below. You'll notice that the receipt number is mentioned, and you can check the case status with this receipt number at any time. As I mentioned, you will also be receiving an I-797 receipt notice. It's based on the mailing address that you include on the I-765, so make sure that this address is somewhere where you are going to be. This could take 2 to 4 weeks. I've seen it take longer. And it's a 90-day processing time that was previously mentioned, and this starts from the I-797 received date. Here's the website where you can check your case status online. And what should you do while the application is pending and being processed? You should make sure you are following all the laws and regulations governing your F1 student status. You can travel within the United States, but do not travel outside of the U.S. if your program end date has passed and you have not received OPT approval. You may no longer work on campus if your I-20 completion date is in the past. You may not begin employment through OPT until you receive the EAD, Employment Authorization Document, from USCIS. Please let the CIE know when you have received your receipt notice, and keep your International Student Advisor updated on the status of your application, and let us know, please let us know, when your EAD arrives. During OPT, what are your expectations? You must retain a job offer letter for each position you hold, and this should be listing the begin date of each employment. You need to work with your employer to determine how you will document the number of hours you work each week. Make sure you retain pay stubs for paid positions, and retain all termination notices for each position you hold. You need to make sure that you have documented the start date and the end date of employment for every position with each employer you hold, and you should make sure to retain tax records for each calendar year of work. What do I need to travel outside the United States during OPT? Yes, once OPT has been approved, you will be able to travel outside of the United States and visit your home country. What documents do you need to travel? You need a passport that's valid for at least 6 months from the date of U.S. entry, and you need a valid F1 visa. If your F1 visa has expired, you will need to apply for a new F1 visa before returning to the United States. You will also need a travel validation signature on page 2 of your OPT I-20. You'll need your employment authorization document, and if OPT is still pending and it is absolutely necessary that you travel, take the original I-79 receipt notice, take your job offer letter, take a letter from your International Student Advisor, and hope that that's enough to get you back through the border. What do I need to report to the College of Lake County? The same reporting information still applies, as you are still in F1 student status and you are still, in the eyes of immigration, a student at CLC. At the beginning, middle, and end of each semester, you must check in and verify your OPT employment. Remember that CLC maintains control of your status. You must make sure to have your updated address on file so that it's updated in CVIS. You need to let us know if you plan to change your status or if your employer has agreed to file for an H-1B visa for you. You need to submit an OPT employment letter if you are switching employers. That is the name, the address of the employer, and when the employment begins and when employment ends. You need to let us know when you receive your employment authorization document. And in general, if your employment changes in any way, you need to make sure you let your international student advisor know. The following are some options at the end of OPT. As I mentioned, you have a 60-day grace period following the completion of your OPT in which you can leave the United States, apply for a change of status, or apply for a transfer for a new degree at a new school. Yes, you still get this 60-day grace period even if you choose an OPT start date 60 days from your program completion date. No, you do not get this 60-day grace period after you accumulate 90 total days of unemployment. Please do not work off campus without your employment authorization document. Work beyond the end date of your OPT authorization and your employment authorization document, and do not begin working before you receive your EAD. OPT approval cannot be given for work done in the past. If you do any of those things, you will be known as violating your student status for the F1 visa, and your international student advisor will be forced to terminate your visa. Please remember to make sure your OPT application is complete before turning it in. Incomplete applications will delay your overall approval. To apply in a timely manner, and take a look at the timeline that was attached to the email so that you can plan out your best steps. Remember that OPT is a benefit you apply for and approval is not guaranteed. USCIS must believe that you meet all eligibility requirements to receive OPT. You will need to also allow time for a Social Security number if applicable. If you have any questions, if this was a live tutorial, you'd submit them in the chat box to the left. But instead, make sure that you email Jacob Cushing, your International Student Advisor, at the email listed below. Feel free to stop by and see us in the Center for International Education in B172, or give me a call at 847-543-2733. Happy job hunting.